Hello and welcome to another video. In this video, I'm going to be sharing 3 things that I wish I had known 6 years ago when I moved to the UK and ultimately to Manchester, which is where I currently stay. So 6 years ago, moved to this country and I was about 26. Yeah, so that tells my age. And I was relatively sheltered in the home that I grew up in because I grew up with 2 very strict parents and I was the eldest sibling and I was very sheltered in terms of just life in general. So I didn't have a bigger understanding of how the world works, and ultimately I'd just done things by the rules. So I'd gone to school, done things in kind of a very linear way of life. But these are the 3 things that I really wish I'd known before moving, and hopefully if you are still going to make your move, you're going to jot these down in a notebook and make sure that you don't make the same mistakes that I did. The overarching principle of these 3 things is having a bigger vision of the reason that you're moving. So you left your home country for a certain reason, or if you're moving to Manchester, you left wherever you are for a certain reason, whether that be studying, or if you're coming from outside of the country, maybe you're moving because you eventually want to settle here and make this a home for yourself and your family, or your future family if you don't have a family as yet. And that is the thing that should drive your bigger plan and the decisions that you make. Number 1, I wish I'd had a better understanding of how finances impact your bigger plan. When I first moved to the UK, I had, I think, a relatively good salary, and I had never actually had that amount of money in my hands. And what I wish I'd done was had a bigger vision of how I want to invest my money and what I want to use my money for. So that I don't end up using it for things that aren't beneficial in the long term. So that was my number 1 mistake, is kind of not having an idea or a bigger vision of how I eventually want to invest my money, grow wealth, and make sure that I'm not stagnant or stuck in the same position for a long time without even intending to, right? So the money decisions that I made at the time were just driven by kind of like the things that I thought were important. And to be honest, a lot of it was. So like I mentioned, I'm the eldest child, and therefore I was responsible and still am for a lot of the things that happen in my family and in the finances, right? But I just spent a lot of money focusing on making sure that my family is okay without having foresight of the fact that if I build wealth here, my family is automatically going to be okay. So if I'd made certain investments, they would be paying off and therefore fueling or kind of providing money for my family. And I wish I'd had that understanding. So saving money and buying a property, even if it would have been just investment property, it would have helped me quite a lot, to be honest. And in those first few years, I was spending a lot of money just hoarding it, and spending it on ad hoc needs. Like if someone called me at home and they needed money on the spot, I'd kind of give it to them because I felt like it was the right thing to do. Or just buying clothes that I didn't really necessarily was going to wear in the long term. I wasn't very conscious about how I was spending money because I didn't see the value of building wealth. And this is a lesson that only hit me later on in my life here in the UK, is that you have to accumulate money to help you make money in the long term. So things like investing in property is a really good way of making money, or even just starting a business or whatever it is that you think will be able to make you money in the long term. And there's a lot of people who give advice about how to grow wealth and invest your money in a better way in the longer term so that it grows and makes you comfortable and financially free, as the people call it these days. My second lesson is understanding visa restrictions. Now, this is probably my biggest mistake, to be honest. When I first moved over, I moved with something called a intercompany visa. And they've since done away with that. But at the time, what that was just when you move from one country to another. So I moved from South Africa to the UK, and you move with that visa. The years that you spent on that specific visa didn't count towards the long term. So your right to remain, it didn't count towards that right to remain. And I spent a lot of time on that visa unnecessarily because I just didn't have the foresight. I didn't have the plan of like, what am I doing here? How long am I going to stay in the UK? And I was just going with life. I was dealing with everyday life things instead of looking up and being like, what are we doing? Like, what's the bigger plan? And I really, that part of it, I really wish someone had snapped me out of it and said, Sibu, get on another visa, girl. So yeah, I don't think people have that problem anymore because that visa is no longer a problem. But check out your visa conditions. If there's anything that might hinder you or stop your progress or maybe even impact your visa itself, make sure that you're not getting on the wrong side of things, or you're not on the incorrect visa, because it's something that might waste your time quite a lot, just in the longer term. Last but not least is people, understanding relationships and people and life in the UK. In the UK, I think that if you don't make a plan to make friendships, like actively make plans to make friendships and actively seek out people to make connections with, you'll just be alone the whole time. Like, everyone is just getting on with their own lives. No one is going to come to your door and say, can I check if you're okay, if they don't know you. And I think it's also just a cultural difference of, for me, South Africa versus being in Manchester and being living in the UK. I think it's just a big cultural difference that people are living their own lives and they prefer it that way, undisturbed. So you have to actively make plans to see people, to try and make connections with people. Some of them might not be friendships. Some of them might just be acquaintances that you kind of walk a certain portion of your life with. So yeah, that's the only way that you can build community and make connections with people. So go to church if you are a church person and you like and enjoy going to church. Go to park runs. Find an activity to do. Like, when people invite you, say yes. Even if you stay like half an hour and go back, you would have met new people. So my prompt to you is, if you are feeling like you are isolated or you're not really finding a connection or what you're seeking, make connections with people. And that's my biggest advice. And that also trickles into your bigger perspective. If you're someone who eventually wants to get married and who wants to build a family within the UK, when you have kids, your kids will need other kids to play with. In order to find someone or a spouse or someone to start a family with, you need to be meeting people actively. So that is my biggest advice. And when it comes to the area of dating and finding relationship, and especially romantic relationship, the UK can be dry pastures, let me tell you, especially if you've got certain conditions that you are kind of like keeping a certain standard for who you want to be in relationship with. So that is one of the other things that I wish I'd figured out early, is that you cannot live in isolation. So that's a roundup of the things that I think I really wish I'd known before moving. And I hope that by watching this video, you're not gonna make the same mistakes as I did, okay? Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you're new here, welcome. In this channel, or on this channel, we talk all things related to health and nutrition and wellness and all things of the like. And we also talk about Manchester and life in Manchester and life in the UK. So yeah, stick around, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.